Now we're at my favorite part of this whole collection video, and that would be my Jerry McFarland puzzles. There's 5 here. The 4 in production magnetic burrs, and then this is Quadlock from 2020, but this is the older design than these. He didn't start doing magnetic designs until 2015. Every puzzle here would come with a booklet. I don't know. Yeah, there we go. I have the 5 here. And in these booklets, I'm not going to spoil anything, so don't worry. He would have like a little bit of history, piece count, stuff like that, kind of like a Stickman thing there. And then he has like CAD drawings and diagrams kind of showing how they go together. And they can be tricky enough to warrant that. These are my Jerry's. It took me a year to get them all. Once I finally got to handle a Jerry, then, I'd been talking to him for almost 2 years. I finally got an opportunity to get one of his puzzles, and then I fell in love with the way his puzzles work, so I just kind of like made it my goal over a year to find them all. And if you're a part of the puzzle community, that story is kind of well known. I told him about it even. I've owned maybe like 11 or 12. I've had the Cutler Cube, the 66 piece one made by him. Too much work. This is about my limit there. I've had the binary burr, like piston burr and some other things. But the ones I really get into are the magnetic burrs. And I do like Quadlock a lot. And for me personally, it's because I have OCD, ADD, PTSD, all the D's. And these are like the only puzzles I have where I can kind of like shut my brain off once I know how to do them, of course, and then go through the whole process of breaking it down and then building it back up. And it actually takes time. Whereas like there's puzzles over here behind me that will take you, forever to figure out. But then once you understand the puzzle, you're going to go through the sequence in a few seconds to a minute. And the puzzle can be undone and put back together, that kind of thing. These aren't the case. And I actually usually rate mine, not rate them, that's a bad word. I usually gauge like what their purpose is by the time it takes me to actually go through that process. Now, Fidget's going to look a little bit worn. This is actually the newest one I have. Kind of gives you an idea of how much I play with them. I'll give you more of a better look in a second when I show each. I'm not going to solve any of them, so don't worry. I'm just going to kind of talk about them real quick, give some history. That's what I do, right? But so what are these? So what they really are is they're put together, take apart puzzles, like a cube maybe is like a way to think of it, but they're like interlocking frames. So imagine, you're making a table and you don't have any screws and it's all like panels and then there's slots, right, to put them into things to lock. Now with burrs, that's usually the notches, how they interact, and that's kind of how these are built, but not at all how they really behave. And I think people kind of stay quiet about that and don't correct people because if more people knew, more people would want them, and then Jerry would have more work on his hands. But at this point, we're in 2023, and the Snappies really got, it was known on MPD how to get in contact with them. And so he ended up making like 50 or so last year, which I believe is like the largest run of anything he's done in this genre. So what are they? Like I said, they're interlocking puzzles that usually have a trick to them. If you see here, you'll see a big square piece. Oh, no, because my hands are off camera. A big square piece. That would be your key piece. There's one there. There's one. This puzzle seems to have, one on each side. This one has 4 in the center going each way. This one has the 1, right? And this one has actually just one that looks like, because this thing's huge. And the idea is to get the key piece out, and then you're able to take them apart. And then there's usually some tricks, some locks in there type things, like walls, to kind of block you off. And then you work through them. Jerry's magnetic puzzle started with a mechanism he designed where 4 burr pieces with steps executed 12 moves automatically due to magnets. He thought it was an interesting novelty, but not a puzzle. See the picture. Well, you can kind of just look at this and know what we're talking about here. He brought this mechanism to the IPP in Canada, and a puzzler there said that would be neat to make into a puzzle. Because things don't have to be complex or hard to figure out. Sometimes just doing something is fun. And like I said, for me, it's like getting my head out of a space. It's not necessarily negative, but you just want to quiet the world. So that was in 2015. So he was playing with the idea, and he was showing people the idea. I'm sure this is when he was reaching out to certain puzzlers that he still talks to this day and wants their feedback from. So in 2016, he made Berova 2D, which is basically this. I think it's a little bit smaller, and it only goes in two directions, not all directions, which is why it's called 2D instead of 3D. A few months after the IPP, this is in 2016 now, I did design a puzzle with the mechanism inside it, calling it, I'm doing this whole thing where I'm speaking as him, inside it calling it Burnova after an exploding star. The design turned out much better than he expected, and he entered it into the IPP in Paris, and it won the design it won a design competition award. After the IPP, started making and selling them to puzzlers. Now, the best person to ask about this would probably be Sinatra's, Five Sinatra's, or Ron, if you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say his last name. And because, these are guys that have been like right there all along. They would know more about the Bernova 2D. I didn't get a 2D Bernova, nor did I get a V2 Burlefant, and we'll get to why when I get to those puzzles. But Bernova 2D was made, and then that was 2016. So this now goes on for 2 years. I'm not quite sure what he was doing then. He might have been working and making stuff like off of his old list, because he does have other designs like Fortress, Quadlock 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have a lot of stuff out there that there's probably just a handful of, and that he doesn't really plan to return to. But in 2018, he made Bernova 3D, which this kind of looks like the final boss, right, of everything laying out here. But this was actually one of the first. This one's right here is number 6. Let me see here. Oh, I forgot I flipped it. Is number 6. And it's like the description said. It is an automated burr. So this one does have the burr mechanism with steps like he describes with the magnets. So what is that in your mind, do you think? So I believe that this was kind of inspired by the Cutler Cube. People will say it wasn't because he created something called a mini block, or I believe it's called mini block. 90, I think is what it's called. But it's like a smaller version of the Cutler Cube. This one's also like the Cutler Cube in the way that all of the burr pieces you're seeing on each side, because it's not like every single hole is filled, right? There are 1, 2, 3, 4 this way, 2, and 2 this way. So the total of 8 burrs pieces, and they have that step hole thing they do with the magnets. And a lot of people are curious about that, and I'll show you because it's not a spoiler. Everybody knows about this. You push this in, right? That's just what it does, and you can hear the precision. I haven't even gotten into the whole bit about like what Jerry does. Jerry works with a CNC, and then he makes these things super precise, and then what he does is he assembles them and sands them as a whole, so they're uniform. That way as the puzzler, which way certain pieces should go, because there's going to be matching pieces. He also engraves or numbers or letters them by hand or with the CNC. It kind of depends on when you got a puzzle from him. And this one here was inspired by the Angel Box. I'll read it to you. When making Bernovas over many months, I kept thinking there must be a way to make a 3D version of Bernova. After about 6 months when he was in church, the way to do it came to him, and he left the church with the idea in his head. He immediately made a glued-up arrangement of the way the step pieces could work in 3D, and the setup of the pieces looked good. He was so obsessed with the idea that he stopped all work on Bernovas to create a prototype of Bernova 3D, It was quite time consuming getting a first prototype puzzle done, but it worked out great, so he started making Berova 3Ds, and it won the design competition award at the IPP in San Diego at 2018. So that one, it won a design competition award. So I'm not sure exactly which ones. They say on the paperwork though. This one here, he was inspired by the Angel Box. It'll tell you on the paperwork I got because of the trapped princess. And these are all going out tomorrow or the next day for me to have them re-wax, which he does because it only takes him a few minutes, he says. He waxes them and then he buffs them the same way he sands them. And this one here is automated. So I'm going to take it off screen for a second so you can't really see how it's done, but I'll show you the pieces moving. So yeah, and I guess as a gag, you can set it up to have like people pick it up and it'll just go off. But you're not going to really see what's going on. Trying. There we go. Well, you just heard that. Scared the cat. And what that clacking noise was all 8 pieces going through 2 steps each. Beyond all what you have to do beyond that, you have to get your hands on one. I'm not going to spoil that. I'll make a video of it, though, so you'll be able to watch it if you need. My thoughts on this. This is one of my favorites. Obviously, it's huge. It's 45 or 44 pieces. 45 pieces. There's some of his humor in this puzzle. I'm not going to spoil anything. It is chaotic. I think that's one of his favorite things with making these designs is he likes the chaos. That's why they're called like Magnetic Madness and Berova and, you know, all these like almost violent sounding things, right? But he likes the chaos. I started really talking to him a lot. He was getting into making Snappy. So I was there talking to him when that was like all, you know, still an idea that people didn't really know about yet. Sorry about hitting that. And I got a version that didn't do a certain thing. And I remember having conversations with him about the thing that it does and him being really thrilled with that. And I thought, well, yeah, he really wants puzzlers to freak out. And it's true. So he's into the experience of it all. So not only is he like a wizard with the wood and his brain comes up with these crazy ideas, but he also really cares about the experience that you have with it. He told me that this puzzle right here, he hasn't gotten much feedback on. Now, to be fair, from the story history here, you'll see he made it for less than a year. And this thing is huge. So I'm sure it takes a lot more work to make these than it does to make like a fidget. I imagine it takes tons more work than the other puzzles to make. So Fidget Burr would be the next thing that he talks about, and that's this one here. And it's another princess. This is a Lego one. The last one was like an Ariel. And, well, it was an Ariel. It's like a Disney Ariel. And this, if you look at it, it looks familiar, right? This has the same vibes of the fidget, or not the fidget, but the Berova that we just saw. You got a trapped character here. You got your key piece you got to get out. Well, that's kind of all of them. And then you have, this one is automated as well. As soon as you push on this one, it starts going. See? So there's kind of a theme with all of his puzzles, right? So with this one here, with the Magnetic Madness, also known as Berova 3D, there's some chaos there, but I believe it was also to do the... so Cutler's Cube has 4 6-piece burrs inside of the cage, holding it all together. And it's crazy. It's hard to do. You start to question your life choices as you're in it. And so I believe that this was kind of like that, to have something big and something to build and work through. But it's 4 2-piece burrs, right? Because there's only 8 burrs. So it's the same type of architecture, except that it's automated. So you don't have to do all the burring. So it's also kind of like a push button burr, because since they're magnetic, Once they're all popped out, you can push them all in, and they pop in and out and all that. And so that's part of the whole fidgety nature of it. And then eventually you'll break it down, take the walls apart, get inside of it, and get the princess out, which um, she's the last thing you're going to get to. So once you have the princess, you're good. But he told me in an email that he told me in person because we met up. I live in Vegas, and he handed me this fidget burr, and he told me that he didn't think many people have actually solved it. He thinks people do what I just did right now, which was make it pop off, scare somebody, do it for yourself, whatever, work through putting it back to the start, which takes a little bit of work. You heard me under the table fumbling with it, but not many people solve it, I guess. And I rate all my Jerry's to myself personally by the amount of time they take. So this one here, whenever I bust it open, it's going to take me an hour. There's going to be about an hour to it. I'll start questioning like the directions of things and stuff like that. It's just your nature with it. You're always going to question yourself along the way. So it's not going to just like fly. So for me, it's like an hour puzzle. Like if I'm going to sit down, I don't want to rush through it or anything. But to break it down and build it back up, I'm like, well, I'm in for like a movie, short movie, or like a TV show that takes an hour, like a Dance of the Dragons or something, right? So that's what that's for to me. Like when I need that big time out. This one here I thought was going to be more like a 10-minute ordeal, like my Quadlock is. This one's more like a 20-minute, like the Burlefin is. And then Snappy is actually another one that's kind of like an hour for me, but that's just me. I don't think it's meant to be that difficult. I just get like goofy brain with this puzzle for some reason. Well, we'll get into that, but I've only solved this one like a few times because every time I get it apart, because it's not hard for me to get apart. Like I get what's going on, but then I have to remember like how to get it back, and that's where I start to like really lose it. It's also the first Jerry that I owned. He sold me one directly. The first Jerry I ever got to play with was a Burlefant, just because of the timing of it all. And it's also my favorite. It's it's an SD puzzle. This is a fidget puzzle. Also, maybe. Well, no, I'm not going to say anything else there. This one is kind of like lock picking. That's the theme behind this one. This one here is coordinated motion. And then Berova 3D here is more like an automated burr, which you have a bit of here. But I believe he told me this is a modified Quadlock 4, but I feel like it has a little bit of all the puzzles in it. It really does. It's got bits of this puzzle in it. It's got a little bit of this puzzle in it. I don't think. Let me think for a second. I don't really think there's anything from Burl in it, but definitely some Berova influence because of the hidden character in it, the automation, right? So Fidget Burr. While making Berova 3Ds, he kept wondering if there was a magnetic puzzle with the pieces moving in parallel instead of sequential like the two Berova puzzles. See, I don't even follow that. That's high level thinking. These guys, a lot of these guys, especially Bill and him, they come from like computers and stuff like that. They're math guys and everything. And he says, after about 6 months, an idea came to mind, and he made a prototype that worked fine. He was so obsessed with the idea that he stopped working on Berova 3Ds early. So my Berova 3D here is number 6, and because of who I got it from and because of the timeline, I don't imagine, also because of people I know that don't have one, that I would have imagined would have gotten one before me. But they're generous, like they've given other people their spots and things like that. So to think that some of those people don't have one yet, we're talking about less than 20. I mean, I would be surprised if there's 15 of them. I don't think. I think we could probably count the amount of people that could make this video right now just this Jerry portion in your hands. And you could be like a machinist yourself and have lost a few fingers. It's just, I wouldn't say it's a lot of work. You just got to stay on top of everything. Talk to him, don't just ask him when he's going to have something ready. Like, talk to a person, get to know them. Don't take up too much of his time because all of us are waiting, right? I'm not really waiting on anything myself. I'm pretty good. I do have one more thing in the future that we've discussed that if he gets to it, then awesome. Like I do, I try to keep in mind that he's older than me. He's retired, so I don't want to put too much work on him. But anyways, so he stopped working on Berova 3Ds early. He initially called it Berova Parallel. Then when playing with the puzzle, he noticed it was fun to fidget with the magnetic action, so he renamed it Fidget Burr. He wanted to enter in the IP design. Oh, sorry, you can't hear anything, right? That is satisfying. He wanted to enter it in the IPP design competition, but the next IPP was canceled due to COVID-19. Fast forward to 2020. Then came Burlefant V3. Now, Burlefant V2 had already been around for a while. I think actually the Burlefant idea is one of his older ones. But Burlefant V2 wasn't SD. SD, here, we'll do air quotes here, SD. I mean, I would almost consider Fidget Burr and Berova to be SDs. Like, not traditionally, like with tools falling out and stuff, but there's definitely a sequence of discoveries, and it's a process. You're not going to solve them quick, but you're also not going to get beat up by them either. Like, they're not hard to solve. They just take time. You have to find things. So this was the first one I ever encountered. And this is what kind of drew me all in because John DeVos had given me a loan. DeVos? Maybe. Given me a loan of this for like a week or two, maybe 3 even. I don't know. But I got nowhere. And on the last day, I started figuring it out. So then I had to get it on to the next person. We all agreed. So I then borrowed one from another friend. And I got to keep it for like a month or two. And it took me like a month to solve this thing. Once I got over like figuring out how Jerry operates, I was kind of fine. It was kind of downhill from there. But I loved every minute of it. And then once you get these apart, you've gone through so many different phases and different things where you need to like figure things out that you might have lost some of it in your mind. And, with a lot of burrs, at least, people will say the reassembly is not part of the puzzle. Like use burr tools, that's not the fun. The fun was to untangle it and get the burr apart. With these, I would say that reassembling them is just as much fun as the disassembly. That's why they have so much replayability. So this one is an SD. So even in the sense that most people think of SDs, I won't get into it any further than that. But I wouldn't say it's like SD laden or anything, right? Maybe a little SD light. But SD light, I feel, is like a cop-out statement. Either something's an SD or it isn't, right? You don't have to have tools for something to be an SD. It has to be like sequences and stuff. He said the reason he didn't say anything was because Kevin from the blog Puzzle Mad told him not to. He said they'll blow your inbox up. So when making Fidget Burrs, a new idea came to mind for making the key piece for Burlefant. Let's burr this guy. I stopped making Burlefant versions 1 and 2 early, so he was making 2 kinds. I know 2 looks kind of wild. There's like holes all over it and everything, so they say it's not SD, but I imagine it probably is under a lot of people's definitions. But he stopped making them early because he did not like the design. So with the new idea for the key piece working out well, he stopped making Fidget Burrs to make these. So he's had these lists, and we'll get to that in a second when I explain how I got them. He has these lists for each one, and some of them can take years. Like he hasn't made a Berova 3D since 2018, and he's back on making Fidget Burrs again. So, I mean, that might be like a 6-7 year run before some people, how long they might have waited to actually own one. He stopped making the Fidget Burrs to make Burlefant 3s. Other changes were made, so version 3 was a lot better than version 2. So he plans to keep making them, and puzzlers really like them. Like this is a no-brainer. This is an awesome puzzle, and I already have a video on it, so you can just check out the channel. You might have already seen it. And then next was Obscure Burr. Now, Obscure Burr is not in this pile. Obscure Burr is not in production anymore. It was a short run. People didn't really, grab onto it. And I'll be honest, it would have been my first Jerry, period. I had been trying to get something from him for about a year and a half, and he offered it to me, but I had been on a waiting list for Berova 3D since 2020. And he said then he was making a Burlefant. I didn't know what that was. So that didn't happen. And then I was under the impression that he just had like a list and you were on it somewhere. And whatever he was making at that point when he reached you on the list, that's what you got. So when he asked me if I wanted an Obscure Burr and that it was, different and math based, and it was only 185 bucks, so that wasn't it at all. I just was like, well, no, I still want a Bernova or maybe even a Burlefant if that's what you go to next. And I flat out said I didn't want to lose my spot to another something else he's going to make. Now I realize that it's more about each puzzle has its own list and everything. So I messed up there, and probably impossible to get one now. It is math based, so I'm not going to give up anything about it. There's a thing on it with like a little wooden clasp that's magnetic that says hint under it. And under that, there's, something that gives you an idea of like a math problem when you combine it with other stuff on it. And then using that information, if you think about it long enough and like how it can be applied to how his puzzles work, then you'll figure out how to unlock it. And that's cool. And then you get the frame apart and everything else. It doesn't have a prize in it, which I think he thought I was really into, which is why he was like, it doesn't have a prize, it's math. So I passed. I probably shouldn't have, because I would still have it that one now. But he says here, when making Burlefant 3s, I got a detached retina and could not work in the shop. Since he was stuck in the bedroom recovering from the detached retina, he started thinking of a design idea he had never before pursued. So he bought an iPad with Apple Pencil and using the Shaper 3D software, did a CAD design for the new puzzle idea. It came out better than he expected, and as soon as he was recovered, he was able to get back in the shop. So he made a prototype, which worked out great, so he started making them. The name Obscure Burr came from his brother, who said, that's really obscure, no one will ever think of that, which is the actual like solution to it. And he's right. It's out there. Even after getting past the math part of it, like it took me a while. I would say a few weeks to like figure out until one moment I was just like, oh, one of those. And then when I went to go try it, it didn't work. But I then knew what I had to do. Like I was able to break it down from there. So that's Obscure Burr. I don't have that one. We'll just have this as a fill-in. I'll talk about this for a moment. This is a 2020 Quadlock, and they also came out in 2012 on CD. Cubic dissection. It's a lock picking. I don't know why I was thinking fingers. And some of these go up and down. This one like goes up, but it won't go down. And it's like finesse, lock picking, right? Where you like feel and you got to do a certain thing. But if you figure out what's going on with this and then do the lock picking right, the lock picking, you'll pull it apart. And super satisfying. I'd take this apart and put it back together for fun a lot of times because it's like a nice 10-15 minute timeout. And you're not fighting any magnets on it or any weird locks or tricks there. It's very straightforward. So I always felt like this is probably a great entry point because you can probably get your hands on one of these for like 500 bucks, 600 bucks, maybe even less, depending on who you talk to. And I don't think he's going to return to it because he's really into the magnetic stuff at this point. Snappy Burr, 2022. So this was a point where, I was really talking to him more often, and he started sharing his ideas with me. And he was telling me about wanting to make something like this. And I was just like, make anything, please. COVID, we were coming off of COVID and everything. So Snappy Burr 2022. I think I got number 10. But I've also had 3 of them. So We'll get to that in just a second as I wrap on this part. When making obscure burrs, I dug out a puzzle idea from my doomed puzzle box. He even put the quotes. He just, he gets an idea for inspiration. He goes and he plays with it. Either that idea works out or it doesn't. If it works out real cool, then he gets really inspired and he starts building around it. So we almost got somewhere with one of his puzzles there, and he'll probably go back to it when he has an idea. He has his own aha moments making the puzzles, which is why they're so great. When making obscure burrs, he dug out a puzzle idea from his Doom puzzle box. After initially rejecting the puzzle mechanism and looking at it a second time, he thought of a way to enhance the mechanism from a single step to 2 steps. And I'll tell you right now, he says 2 steps. This thing is hard. It's for me at least. I got called stupid by someone for not knowing how to put this together. Let's see. 2 steps. He enclosed the mechanism in a puzzle cage, and along with other changes, it became a nice design. Calling it Snappy Burr based on the Snappy mechanism, he immediately stopped making. You see a trend here, right? Stopped making obscure burrs to make Snappy Burrs. He made several prototypes for other possible magnetic puzzle ideas, but none of those worked out. So which is, I think, is one of the ones we were talking about. So after completing about 50 Snappy Burrs, he started making Fidget Burrs again. Due to limited time, he decided to retire Obscure Burr. Oh, this is where he says it. And Berova 2D, which, yeah, he's got the 3D. But I plan to continue making the 4 other magnetic puzzles in rotation. So that's awesome that he shared all of that with us. What does all that mean? He loves making puzzles, and he loves designing. And he loves when an idea kind of pops in his head and it becomes something. Like I said, I was going to explain my whole journey on this. This was a complex path to follow for me. And I'm sure I didn't come out of it with any scars, Wait, I think I said that wrong, but I think you know what I was trying to say. There was definitely battle wounds along the way. And all in a pursuit for, to experience what seems close to perfection, at least in my opinion. After doing puzzles for a couple of years, SDs, stuff like that, I stopped really wanting to follow other people's logic down these weird paths and stuff, and I just started to really enjoy, like, treating puzzles like Legos. Something to build and do to occupy your time. And here's the real truth about that part of it all is I was never one, even with all the puzzles I've solved and on camera and everything, I've never been one to want to think about puzzles. I know that sounds weird because I design them and everything. Same reason I don't watch magic, right? Magic to me was something to occupy my hands and take my mind off of my life. Same thing with puzzles, especially mechanical puzzles. So if you give me a puzzle that's beautiful, made of great wood, made by someone that really knows what they're doing, so the precision and the fitment and everything is just amazing, because Jerry's on my top 3 all day of, like, the best people to make, like, the wood move great and just satisfying and, like, an heirloom object you're just going to keep. Yeah, no doubt. But when you're looking for, like, a precision, geometric, or thing you have to work through like this, the precision's very important. And we're back. And so, let's be nice to them. Rather than, like, go through the numbers, because I have done this. I've done this on my Discord. I explained it to Jerry and everything. My nickname's Hustle. I've had 3 of these. I've had 2 of these, only 1 of these. I've had 2 of these. I've had 1 of these. I've also had the Cutler Cube, the binary, the piston. And because of that, and because of when I was more active selling, more in the Discords and everything, I would get hounded when I showed these or that I had, gotten my hands on a Burlefant. I would get, a millionaire collector hitting me up in the DMs like, I want to give you $4,000 for it. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Oh, can I give you a wooden slam car for it? And I'm like, no. But then, stop chewing on that, please. If I paid like 750, let's say, for it, and then I bought another one for 1700, then I could say to this collector, here, I'll give it to you for 25. Now he's getting it for 1500 less than the first offer, so he's ecstatic. Mine is free now, so I'm thoroughly pleased. I'm still looking at the screen, sorry. And I kind of did that with all of these. So at this point now, it's not like, you know, I did pay 2500 for this. I did pay 1700 for this, 600 for this, 550 for this. I got this one retail. I forgot though how much I pay. It's like almost 300. And I got one of these retail, of course. And this is 23. This is 23. These aren't numbered, but it's 2020. This is 17 now, but I did have a 23. The second one I had was a 23, and this is number 6. So almost had, you know, them all kind of matching up. This is a 2020, even though I got it this year. He kind of, you know, he was coming out to Vegas, so he hooked me up early, and it was like my birthday too. So that was amazing. And then like he started, you know, releasing them right around then too as well. He just had parts from the 2020 run, and he used them for me on this one. This one's 2020. This is 2022. This one here is 2020, and this one here, I believe, is 2018. Just because I don't have everything memorized. So yeah, this is. So yeah, when I look at it and I'm like, oh, 2,500 paid, well, no, because I paid for this with the other stuff that I did within this same collection. So it's not like that at all, really. So that's why I keep them, and that's why they're a cool set. And then I am also going to make a video for Jerry because he wants feedback on a lot of it, so I thought this would be a good time. That is the Jerry McFarland Magnetic Burr. These are the ones in production that you could probably, you know, ask them about if you know how to reach them. And if you know how to reach them, you're already on a list, I imagine. So there's no point in going into all that. But yeah, so I kind of went over them, what their not gimmick was, but kind of like their theme. I don't think I've spoiled anything that people don't already know. But yeah, honestly, super thumbs up. As a set here, 100%. I know I said I was never going to say that there wasn't perfection, but I'm overloaded right now. You know, 4 of these guys, this is perfection. You know, like they sit on the back. Like if you look behind me right now, my top shelf is basically empty. There's a Dwemer there, a clutch, and the original Daedalus Zero Coat. Well, I still have some nice stuff up there, but anyways, yeah. But they reign supreme. This is their kingdom, my brain. So there you go. Thanks.